Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight. Warsaw's mayor Rafał Trzaskowski wins the first round of presidential elections in Poland by only a slim margin over his main opponent Karol Nawrocki. The far right takes more than 20% of the vote, so we'll have more on that in a moment. But first, let's take a look at the latest headlines. Bucharest Mayor Nicu Șerdan wins the presidential election in Romania. Donald Trump negotiates peace in Ukraine with Russia's Putin. And the EU and UK usher in a new era of cooperation. Intense weeks are coming for Rafał Trzaskowski and Karol Nawrocki, the two candidates who gathered around 31% and 29% of votes, respectively, in the first round of the presidential election in Poland. As the race begins anew, both the ruling coalition and the main opposition party favourites will be looking for votes outside of the political camps ahead of the ultimate face-off on June the 1st. Our chief political correspondent, Aaron Damon, has this report.
Poland's presidential race down to the slimmest of margins.
The top two here, Rafał Trzaskowski, Karol Nawrocki, it is razor tight.
All eyes now on a final face-off between centrist Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski and right-wing historian Karol Nawrocki, who outperformed projected numbers to get within striking distance. It's a battle on June 1st that pits the pro-EU and NATO Trzaskowski.
There is a lot of work ahead of us. We need full determination. We need your votes. We need everyone's conviction.
Against a Eurosceptic Nawrocki of the opposition Law and Justice Party, who is fiercely rallying in the image of US President Donald Trump and against European influence.
Yes, we will indeed win these elections. We are ready for this. We are determined, and it will all end with our common victory. Poland's victory.
A poll out on Monday shows that the final run-in could be close to a dead heat, with a number of swing voters in play.
Now what is on the side of both candidates is mobilization of the unmobilized, mobilization of candidates of their opponents in the first round.
And there is much at stake, not least for Poland's ruling coalition. Prime Minister Donald Tusk is in a paralysing cohabitation with current President and Law and Justice ally Andrzej Duda, who has stalled proposed reforms since Tusk won the general election in 2023.
If Trzaskowski wins, there will be no excuse future for the governing coalition, for the civic platform. When Karol Nawrocki wins, that would mean that there will be the lasting deadlock between the two kind of approaches to politics.
One sticking point for young people and women, many of whom voted for the coalition, is a lack of progress on social issues such as abortion and civil partnerships. Trzaskowski immediately taking to the stage on Sunday night to promise change.
On the first day after the victory, I will take on very hard work, and I guarantee you a bill which will abolish that medieval anti-abortion law. I guarantee it.
Almost 20 million Poles cast their ballots, or 67%, a record for the first round of the presidential election, but still short of the roughly 74% turnout in the general election 2 years ago. Translated into numbers, Trzaskowski picked up just over 6 million votes, with Nawrocki right behind him around 5.7. Trzaskowski leads with women and Nawrocki is in front with men, while many young people backed the far-right Sławomir Mentzen, who built a large following on TikTok and finished in third place. With Mentzen's votes now up for grabs, as well as those of other candidates across the board, Trzaskowski and Nawrocki are ramping up the heat.
The Poles overestimated Rafał Trzaskowski. I was underestimated. So it's a very good prognosis that in these 2 weeks I will be able to defeat Rafał Trzaskowski and become President of Poland. We face a choice between normal Poland and radical Poland. We can all see that Karol Nawrocki is the most radical politician of the Law and Justice Party.
There are 2 weeks of political manoeuvring and mudslinging to go. Aaron Darman, TVP World.
The two main far-right candidates, Sławomir Mentzen of the Confederation and his former party colleague, Grzegorz Braun, have together gathered over 20% of the vote in the first round of the Polish presidential elections. Their overall result is much higher than anticipated by polling experts, and Mentzen has even secured the highest score among youngest voters. Tomorrow, the Confederation candidate will announce his endorsement of one of the remaining presidential contenders. Jeremy Hołodniuk reports.
Cheers and applause accompanied the reveal of exit polls at post-election rallies of both Sławomir Mentzen and Grzegorz Braun. Mentzen of the Libertine Nationalist Confederation received a little over 14% of the vote, while Braun, until recently a prominent figure in the Confederation Party, who was expelled just this January after announcing his candidacy in the presidential election, a little over 6%. Together they garnered the support of over 21% of eligible voters, or 4,145,365 people, a result for the far right that's well above expectations.
I came in third place, which makes this the greatest success in the history of our movement, both in terms of percentage and the number of votes cast.
Sławomir Mentzen is an entrepreneur known for his libertarian and nationalist views, including opposition to abortion in all cases, support for liberalizing gun laws, and skepticism toward aid for Ukrainians.
People are tired with the war in Ukraine, with difficult economic situation, so they are just waiting for simple answers for difficult questions. And what Mentzen offers and the right candidates offer is a false promise of simple solutions.
Compared to the first round of the 2020 elections, when the Confederation candidate gained 1.5 million votes, this year the party garnered almost 3 million. Mentzen was also clearly the choice of young people. Among voters aged 18 to 39, he came in first. Many attribute this to his campaign on social media.
His coalition is actually not exclusively right-wing coalition. He's the first choice for first-time voters. He is the first choice for the youngest voters. So those are usually the most volatile voters.
Another result came as an even bigger surprise than Mentzen's. Eurosceptic Grzegorz Braun, known for his controversial stunts, most noticeably using a fire extinguisher to put out a Hanukkah menorah in the Polish parliament, did not hide his satisfaction after the release of the first round exit polls.
This was the way in before the fight that the broad fire extinguisher front will successfully wage in the upcoming parliamentary elections.
Do najbliższych wyborów parlamentarnych.
Braun, a Eurosceptic MEP and leader of the Confederation of the Polish Crown Party, is known for his denunciation of COVID-19 restrictions, his anti-Semitic and pro-Russian views, as well as his opposition to support for Ukraine. In recent years, he has gained notoriety for controversial stunts, including disruptive behaviour in the Polish parliament and his exclusion from European Parliament sessions. Braun has also come a long way in the last 10 years. In the 2015 presidential elections, he secured 0.83%, or 124,132 votes. This time, he garnered just over 1,240,000 votes.
Braun's supporters, it's the biggest phenomenon of these elections, but Braun was appealing to people who are having this anti-Ukrainian sentiment.
2 weeks before the runoff, the question arises, will Mentzen and Braun endorse anyone, and if so, who? Mentzen announced on Tuesday he will reveal the candidate who will receive his backing in the runoff. But one thing is sure, whoever wants to win the election will need that support. This report for TVP World, Jeremy Howodniuk.
And now let's move on to Romania, where Bucharest's pro-EU and centrist mayor, Nicu Șerdan, has won the presidential election, beating his opponent, Eurosceptic far-right candidate George Simeon, some 54 to 46% of votes. Our correspondent, Paweł Trzaskowski, has been following the latest events in Bucharest. Good evening, Paweł. So, has the dust already settled? And what comes next for Romania?
Well, the dust is settling slowly, and next, Nicu Șerdan will have to assume office. According to the Romanian constitution, he has 20 days to do so, and he will be taking over Ilie Bolojan, the country's interim president. However, at the moment, Romania has not only an interim president, but also an interim government. And one of the prerogatives of a president in Romania is designating the new prime minister. The government is supposed to change, and Dan is expected to hold meetings with leaders of all the major parties in the country. After these meetings, he is expected to designate a new prime minister who will then be tasked with forming the new government. The shape of this future government is yet unknown, as Dan was running as an independent, and therefore various coalitions are possible. Please listen to Dan talking about it himself.
The president has a very important role, perhaps the most important, to nominate a prime minister. Right now, the position is vacant, and I do not intend to rush the nomination. I will only do so after conducting broad negotiations with the four pro-Western parties in order to prepare not just the nomination of the future prime minister, but also the program of the future government. During these negotiations, I will make sure that the issue of justice is clearly agreed upon between myself and the government.
What's easier to determine, though, is the future direction of Dan's presidency. During his campaign, he promised a nationwide fight with corruption. He promised to keep Romania on the pro-European path and to maintain support for Ukraine. But we have to remember that his path to presidency was far from obvious. He barely made it to the presidential runoff, and I would like you to listen to one of the guests of TVP World who explained very well his road to victory and his defeat, and George Simeon's defeat. Please listen.
It's a huge success because he actually made up 25% almost of the electorate, meaning that he could also take advantage of the many errors of his counter-candidate, George Simeon, who in the last 2 weeks rather displayed his way of governing Romania had he been elected president, meaning it was a race against time, first of all. It was George Simeon's approach with much nonchalance and a sort of considering himself already elected. In doing so, he managed to send a message of negligence, of rather incompetence.
All in all, Sunday's ballot finished the half-year-long presidential saga in Romania, a presidential saga that started in December last year when the country's constitutional court annulled the first round of presidential elections, citing foreign malign interference. Nicu Șerdan becomes the next president of Romania for a 5-year-long term. Maciej.
That was Paweł Trzaskowski reporting from Bucharest. Thank you very much, Paweł. US President Donald Trump talked to Russian leader Vladimir Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday in an attempt to find a diplomatic solution to the war in Ukraine. And so we're going now live to Kyiv to our correspondent Oskar Taji. Good evening, Oz. What more do we know about these latest phone calls between the three politicians? And, well, most importantly, has any breakthrough been reached?
Good evening, Massey. Well, look, the conversation between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin is going to be taking all of the headlines. Donald Trump has posted a Truth Social post boasting of the conversation. We've also had a readout from the Kremlin of what Putin's side thought of those discussions. Let's take a look at what Donald Trump had to say first in his response to that phone conversation.
Just completed my 2-hour call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. I believe it went very well. Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war. The conditions for that will be negotiated between the two parties, as it can only be, because they know details of a negotiations that nobody else would be aware of. The tone and spirit of the conversation were excellent. If it wasn't, I would say so now rather than later. Russia wants to do large-scale trade with the United States when this catastrophic bloodbath is over, and I agree. There is a tremendous opportunity for Russia to create massive amounts of jobs and wealth. Its potential is unlimited. Likewise, Ukraine can be a great beneficiary of trade in the process of rebuilding its country. Negotiations between Russia and Ukraine will begin immediately.
So, as someone who is familiar with these negotiations, who has been monitoring them closely, it's very difficult to pass what Donald Trump thinks he has achieved from this phone call. Now, on the Russian side, Putin says he thinks negotiations are on the right track. No sign of the immediately start ceasefire negotiations coming from the Trump side, though. And in fact, Vladimir Putin, while he may be talking of potentially making compromises and thinking that the negotiations are generally on the right track, the line that stands out the most from the Kremlin readout is Putin saying that, of course, they're willing to talk peace as long as they address the root causes of the conflict. Now, we heard from the Russian negotiators in Istanbul last week what they think the root causes of the conflict are and what they think the solutions are. Effectively, a surrender from Ukraine, a withdrawal from territories that are Ukrainian territories that Russia doesn't even currently occupy, and basically regime change. These are the same topics of conversation that Putin was demanding from the Ukrainians in February 2022. It's difficult to understand what compromises are being offered by the Russians. So far, none have really come to fruition. None have really come to light. The Ukrainians certainly don't see things the way the Russians do. So this positivity coming from Donald Trump, it's difficult to understand what has been achieved. And this line of immediately starting ceasefire negotiations, the Russians have already said clearly they don't see negotiations over a ceasefire happening until those root causes of the conflict that Russia claims have been addressed. And those root causes, as we keep coming back to, are basically Ukraine's sovereignty, Ukraine's independence, Ukraine's democracy, Ukraine's ability to make decisions on which negotiations, which partners it wants to make. And ultimately, there's one big question mark hanging over all of this: security guarantees for Ukraine should Russia decide it wants to invade again. Russia has already violated multiple agreements with Ukraine. Why should the Ukrainians believe this round of negotiations will be any different? Back to you, Maciej.
That was Oskar Terzi reporting from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Os. EU's top officials came to London today to pen a new post-Brexit deal. The main goal of the agreement is to mend strained trade relations, facilitate the movement of people, enhance defence cooperation and settle the fishing rights issue. Our correspondent Alex Kadir reports on the brand new UK-EU opening.
Well, after years of debating and discussing and negotiating and, frankly, animosity between London and Brussels, it seems both sides are eager now to reset that relationship. That was the message from Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, from Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, wanting to look forward, not backward. They said, we heard from Ursula von der Leyen herself, hailing this as a historic moment here in London. Let's have a listen to what she said.
We're turning a page. We're opening a new chapter in our unique relationship. This is the story of historical and natural partners standing side by side on the global stage, facing most of the same challenges, pursuing the same objectives, like-minded, sharing the same values, and thus we are looking for solutions that are beneficial for both our people and standing shoulder by shoulder when it comes to really getting to the solutions.
And those European leaders really offering their support to Keir Starmer, saying that this is not a return to the customs union, to freedom of movement, not a return to the European Union for the UK, because domestically Keir Starmer under a lot of pressure. The fisheries deal as part of this agreement allows French, Dutch and other European ships to fish in British waters, something that has received a lot of criticism in the UK. In exchange, the EU will cut red tape and allow shellfish and other products to be sold now in the EU once again. So certainly a bit of give and take from both sides, but that key piece is on defence. We heard from Keir Starmer. I was at a press conference earlier today. Let's have a listen to what he said.
We've also struck a new defence and security partnership to strengthen our cooperation and strengthen our security, which is vital in this dangerous new era. And it will open the door to working with the EU's new defence fund, providing new opportunities for our defence industry.
Clearly that focus on defence a really important piece of this. It means that in the future, once the final details are nailed down, the UK will be able to engage in joint procurement with European powers to get European Union money to buy more weaponry, more equipment to help with boosting defence capabilities. It also means that British contractors like BAE Systems and Rolls-Royce can then receive European money for orders from European countries. Certainly it is being described as a reset, a historic deal by all leaders involved, and it will mean that for now, looking forward, the UK and the EU will start walking hand in hand once again. In London, I'm Alex Cadier for TVP World.
The first round of presidential elections in Poland has brought up more questions than answers as the two main contenders went neck and neck. The narrow win of Liberal Rafał Trzaskowski over right-wing Karol Nawrocki means that both candidates will have to court the supporters of other parties, with the far-right Confederation votes being the tastiest morsel. And to discuss the outcome of the first round of the vote and the next 2 weeks of campaign, we're joined by Jovanka Kubek-Lalik, Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law and Administration of the University of Warsaw. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Rafał Trzaskowski, candidate of the main coalition party, won the first round, as I have already mentioned, some 31 to 29% over his rival Karol Nawrocki. Now, whose votes can they count on now?
Indeed, there is a very narrow difference between the two main contenders, so there will be a struggle to gain more support for the second round. So basically what we need to sum up are the electoral votes coming from two different, let's say, political families in general. So one political family is liberal-oriented, and there we can count not only the Civic Platform Liberal Party, but also the coalition partners and the left-wing parties. But on the other hand, we also have the right-wing and ultra-right-wing parties, with also extreme right candidate Grzegorz Braun, who actually gathered quite a lot of support, and that was one of the surprises of the yesterday's election results. So indeed, next 2 weeks will be all about convincing the voters who decided to vote for other candidates in the first round, and also to gain more support and to mobilize the people who decided to stay home during the first round to go and vote in the second round.
All right, so let's talk about the turnout, because it was the record high turnout in Poland when it comes to presidential elections, though it was way lower than during the parliamentary elections 2 years ago in 2023. Now, so who should mobilize the voters more?
Well, first of all, the elections in 2023 were really exceptional. So the turnout, around 74%, that was really extremely high for Polish standards. So indeed, in Poland, during the presidential elections, the turnout usually is higher than in the parliamentary ones. It was not the case this time. However, we still can consider the turnout quite high. What is quite surprising, I think, and worth noting is that the turnout was very high among young people. And among young people also, the majority of them decided not to support the two main candidates, but rather they were supporting either the right-wing candidates, the far right-wing candidates, or the left-wing candidates, Adrian Zandberg, who actually had very high result among the young voters. Meaning that actually this kind of duopoly of the two main parties or political families in Poland is challenged, especially in the younger generation of voters.
Right, so what will, in your opinion, the campaign concentrate on in these 2 coming weeks? As you said, both will try their best to convince the Confederation, the far-right voters, with what?
Actually, I think that we can expect a lot of surprises in the coming days, because some analysts say that the voters who voted for the far-right parties are much more likely to vote for for the candidate who is also conservative, right-wing, so Mr. Karol Nawrocki. However, I would say that voters actually have different agendas. They have different expectations. For some of them, for example, economic liberty is the most important aspect of the political program. So there, they actually might be quite likely to vote for Mr. Rafał Trzaskowski, who is supporting the liberal values also in terms of economy, contrary to Mr. Karol Nawrocki. So I wouldn't say that it's such an easy explanation that vast majority of the voters who decided to vote for the right-wing candidates in the first round will simply go and vote for Mr. Karol Nawrocki. So we can expect indeed quite interesting twists in the next days.
Right. Now, we already know that Sławomir Mentzen tomorrow will announce his endorsement of one of the remaining candidates. All right. We are not still sure which one will it be. But it will be either Rafał Trzaskowski or Karol Nawrocki. Now, the question is, isn't it counterproductive as you treat your voters like, an asset that you can move from one side to another?
This is why I don't really believe in this kind of endorsements, because I believe that the voters will choose the candidates based on their priorities, not only what they will hear from the candidate that they supported in the first round. And here again, I would say that we can support some unexpected situations, because I think that in the calendar of Mr. Mentzen, he definitely sees the date 2027, when the next parliamentary elections in Poland will take place. And for his interests, the most important thing is to gather support ahead of those parliamentary elections. So for sure, that will be one of his main priorities when he will be deciding to either support or not support some candidates or program, or actually sending a signal to his electorate or building the future support in the next electoral campaign.
Right. The last question may surprise you, or maybe not. What advice would you give to Rafał Trzaskowski? And if you were to advise his opponent as well, Karol Nawrocki, what would you suggest them to do?
Well, for sure, the more meetings they will be able to hold, the more people they will be able to meet, that's better. So going around Poland, for sure, having a lot of meetings and speaking to a lot of different people, also those who do not agree with them. So this is the most important thing, to listen to the people and to address their concerns. Because I think that the biggest mistake that has been made in the past months and weeks of the campaign was treating some parts of the electorate quite arrogantly. And that also resulted in the part of the electorate turning to this far-right candidate. So we cannot treat people in such a way. We need to listen to their concerns, try to understand them, and really address what they want from us.
To be a politician with a golden heart.
Well, at least they can
I've already
try.
heard it. Right. Jovanka Jakubek-Gralik, Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law and Administration of the University of Warsaw, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more news and features here on TVP World.